2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Blake Williams. Blake, you know it's baseball season because our midweek live shows, Tuesday nights and Friday nights, are back. It's good to be with you. Pitchers and catchers have reported. The rest of the dudes have shown up. Even a couple of the guys that were late are there. It's officially baseball season.
Yeah, it's about time. It's exciting. The Dodgers obviously have a great team, but I'm a little surprised you're forgetting our guy, Dinelson Lamet, who hasn't reported yet. Only player there, so not everyone's there yet. So hopefully soon the Dodgers get that figured out and we can get everyone in camp.
Hey, you're welcome on the Dinelson Lamet. I think I predicted him as a 40-man guy that might stick around a little bit. So do you want to join me on Dinelson Lamet, island?
I think he'll pitch for the club at some point in the year, but not making the 40-man opening day or any of that.
Okay, fair enough. Well, it's good to be together. Again, lots to get to tonight. And if you missed it, Tuesday nights, we will be here. I will be here with Blake or Matt, probably, maybe Scott occasionally, maybe Daniel if there's no Laker games on Tuesdays. And then on Friday nights at 9 p.m. throughout spring training. And then once the season starts, those will become live post-game shows. Sunday night shows still going on as well. So tons of content, lots to talk about. So good that you are here. Thanks to everybody joining us live on YouTube, live on Facebook, live on Twitter. Those listening after the fact via podcast, welcome. You can check us out, Apple, Spotify, and Google. Plan for tonight, I want to talk about Shohei Ohtani and the media, the zoo that is surrounding him, the people that are there, and some of the reactions from Dave Roberts making some comments that were potentially awkward. Jason Hayward gets involved, Walker Buehler as well. We'll talk about Miguel Vargas, who's officially made a position change, at least in spring training. Talk about Gavin Lux, what are the expectations for a guy who is now fully cleared? And then last but not least, before we get to questions, some people, Blake, are talking about jerseys and hats and whether Fanatics is good at what they do. So we'll dive into that as well. But let's talk about Dave Roberts and some comments made about Shohei Ohtani. You tell me if I'm overreacting here, Blake. Ohtani, for those that didn't follow super closely when he was an Angel, kind of had a reputation of being unavailable, let's say, to the media. He rarely talked to them. I guess he skipped some press conferences. He avoided them whenever he could. And so Dave Roberts was asked kind of what the schedule is going to be. And he sort of hinted that this might frustrate some folks with the Dodgers if that were to continue. His actual full quote was this: when you put this uniform on, there's a certain standard in how you go about things. That includes appreciating the fact that there's more responsibility, more autographs to sign, more media probably to contend with. As I read that, that felt like, conscious or unconscious, a shot across the bow of Ohtani. It's like, hey, Shohei, it's nice to have you here. We're all getting used to each other, but things are going to be a little bit different here than they were down in Anaheim. Am I overreacting to Dave Roberts' quote in your estimation, Blake?
I think it's probably fair. I'm sure before the Dodgers signed their contract, they had discussions with him about his obligations and all that kind of stuff. You're not signing a player to $700 million. It's mostly a business decision contract there. They're doing it to make money off him. It's not just based on his talent on the field, which is obviously great, but the Dodgers want to be able to market him and get the most out of him, and that's why they're paying him that much. So I think the front office and Dave Roberts probably had that talk with him about, hey, you're going to have to do some more media stuff. You're going to have to talk. Because when he was with the Angels, he was only talking after starts, which he's obviously not going to do this year as he's not pitching. So I think it's kind of more Dave just saying, like, you can maybe expect some more things. And I'm not sure it's Dave actually like criticizing Shohei at this point in time. It's spring training. It's been a few days of spring training. I don't think there's too much to it, but it might be something that we might want to look into a little bit more if it keeps going on throughout the season, but I don't think it's anything to look into too much at this point.
I've learned that sometimes I think it's safe to assume Dave Roberts maybe hasn't totally thought out the things that he says to the media in a context like this. I bet if you had given him time to think about an answer, he would have answered differently. I love some of the comments we have in here. Matty Man 5 says, if I was Dave, I'd be careful how I talked about Shohei. Just saying. I mean, Dave Roberts is not one of the still has to be employed, and otherwise my contract becomes void. We've got Beaches. It comes with the territory. Joining an elite organization comes with tremendous responsibility. No, do we need a no disrespect to the Angels there, Blake, on the elite organization piece? Or
I think the Angels deserve all the slander and disrespect they get.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Some other quotes. The funny piece was Dave Roberts shared a story about how when he was with the Giants and Barry Bonds was kind of attracting all the attention, that Roberts himself was sort of a guy who had to answer a lot of questions. It was like, and the media was like, okay, well, who's that going to be? And he said, go talk to Jason Hayward. The next day, the media crowds around Jason Hayward and asks him, and he basically says, Shohei is the guy you can talk to if you want to talk about Shohei. Then he had my favorite quote when asked if this was going to be difficult. He said, well, you all are the media. How difficult are you going to make it this year? There was some positivity. Walker Buehler, when asked about all the coverage, said it's a great thing, kind of hinted at some guys getting more recognition, more awareness because of Ohtani is going to be a positive. You're a guy that's going to be in the locker room at a lot of home games this year, Blake. You'll be in spring training. We're going to talk a little bit that you might be going across the pond and visiting an international couple of baseball games as well. But without having seen the Ohtani experience up front, Buehler says, hey, I think it's going to be a good thing. The rest of the guys seem a little concerned. How do you think this plays out?
It's hard to say because I think every player is going to react differently to it. Some players are going to want to be more private and not have to deal with it. And some players are going to want the spotlight. Like, I think you could say Buehler might be a guy who likes the spotlight. If Kike was that kind of player too, he's not with the team right now, or maybe not in the future, but like those are the guys who are going to want the spotlight, while other guys are going to want to kind of stay to the back. Thankfully for the players, when media is allowed inside the clubhouse, all the players don't have to be there. They can be in the hitting rooms or getting lunch in the cafeteria they have or whatever. Like, they don't have to deal with it if they don't want to. But I think some players might get a little annoyed if 90% of their questions are about Shohei Ohtani. I mean, when Chris Taylor was hosting his charity event, he kind of joked, and like, there's truth to it. It was a joke from him, but he wasn't lying about it. Like, all the questions he had to answer this year were mostly about Ohtani, and he didn't really talk about himself that much. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where the players are going to kind of get used to it, and hopefully they find ways to get breaks from it and get to talk about themselves still. And I think also as media, we have to do our job correctly and not just ask about Shohei. And as exciting and as much as fans want to hear about him, like, every player is their own individual player, and they should be the ones talking about themselves.
As a guy who's been in the locker room, can you think of one or two Dodgers that might not be bothered by the extra attention? You mentioned Kike if he were still around. I mean, I get the sense Mookie Betts is not going to be fired up about this. Freddie Freeman feels like somebody who might kind of handle it professionally and, hey, this is part of the job. I've got to do this. But can you think of anybody in particular who might be excited?
I mean, I felt like a lot of the Dodgers players were kind of reserved and somewhat like staying away from the limelight as much. Like, I think that was even part of the criticism they had last year. Like, they all seemed too relaxed at times.
Yeah.
And that translated into the clubhouse. Off the top of my head, I don't have a great answer for you. It might pop up at some point during the show, but maybe Miguel Rojas. He seems like a guy who is always like very talkative with the media. So I'll go with him, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, like, having been in there just a couple times, it's not going to be Will Smith. You know, you've got a lot of guys that English isn't a first language, so it's going to be tough for all of those guys. And then you've got young guys like James Outman. You know, I could see maybe 5 years from now being somebody that doesn't mind it. I don't think in his second season he's necessarily going to be asking for microphones to be shoved in front of his face. So something to keep an eye on. Again, if things do go south, if there's a rough patch, these are just the types of things that can feel like little cracks in the foundation. So something to keep an eye on there. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about another second-year player, much like James Outman, but one who didn't have quite the success that Outman did. It's our guy, Miguel Vargas. Juan Toribio reporting he is listed as a left fielder in spring training, was seen working with Andre Ethier. We kind of knew that this was going to be in the realm of possibilities because that's kind of his best chance of getting on the field this year, given that Mookie Betts is going to be playing second base. Andrew Friedman had this to say earlier about Vargas, quote, Vargas is one of the most talented natural hitters I've seen as a minor leaguer coming up. So just getting back to that, I think is going to be very helpful for him. And just how clear-eyed he is about it has us really encouraged. So the Dodgers feeling encouraged about Vargas. Let's talk about the position change here. We know he's young. We know he's athletic. We also have seen young athletic players, i.e. Gavin Lux, try out the outfield and not have it go especially well. What do you make of Vargas in left field, and do you think he can stick out there?
I do think he can stick with enough practice. With Gavin Lux, I think that's kind of a more unfair comparison because they kind of just forced him out there without much practice, and it obviously didn't go well, but they kind of asked him to do something that he hadn't done before, and that was an unfair position to him. For Vargas, I think with enough work, he can still be fine there. He has the athleticism to play there. I mean, we saw the Dodgers put Howie Kendrick out there and be fine, so if Howie Kendrick with his no athleticism can handle it, I'm sure Vargas can. And then kind of related to their confidence in him, I'm still confident in him. I think he got off to a bad break last year with the injuries and getting hit on the hand again after he returned, and he just never really found his rhythm. I don't think it's anything to give up on him for that, and it seems the Dodgers feel that way also. But Teoscar Hernandez is on a one-year deal. Jason Hayward's on a one-year deal. Looking ahead to the future, you're going to need an outfielder, so hopefully Vargas can get the year he needs to practice in AAA and possibly sometime with the Dodgers and take over that starting role. Worst case scenario, he increases his versatility and he could be a solid bench player and move around the field for them. And I guess absolute worst case scenario is it just doesn't work out and he kind of flames out, but at least you gave him the chance and tried other things to get him adjusted. And the final point is the Dodgers outfield by the projections, it's also still their worst position group. It's the biggest question marks. I think Jason Hayward's like a 92 weighted runs created plus guy, and most of their guys are right around that 100 mark for the projections. So maybe Vargas is a guy who ends up playing a little more than we expect if some of the other guys don't work out.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. There's names that you kind of feel okay about, but at the same time, nobody's going to sit here and say James Outman in his second year is without risk. Jason Hayward, who had a really good season by a lot of metrics last year and maybe an overperforming season by some other metrics. You've got Margot, Teoscar Hernandez, who we're kind of, I've joked, we're betting on home road splits being a very real thing with both of those guys. You've got Chris Taylor in the mix. And so it does feel like there's a wide range of potential outcomes with some guys. I'm with you at the end of the day on Vargas, and we're going to talk about Gavin Lux. And I was just finishing up from Kerry Osborne, an article about Gavin Stone. Like, I just tend to default to the fact that I don't want to jump to negative conclusions about prospects over a small sample size, especially if I can find extenuating circumstances that may sort of make me question what I saw. We know about Vargas. We know about the injury he has right at the beginning of the year. He comes back and then struggles. I mean, he had 300 plate appearances, so it wasn't a small sample size. Hits 195, 80. It was an 85 weighted runs created plus. I know all of that. It does make me feel good that he went back down to AAA, had an on base over 400, a slug of 480, weighted runs created plus of almost 120. So he was able to go back down to a very hitter friendly AAA. I know, but still perform. It's not like he went down there and got destroyed down there as well. And I don't think Andrew Friedman says it lightly when he says he's one of the more talented natural hitters he has ever seen coming up, because that was the report on him. I tend to believe, Blake, that a guy like that doesn't just forget to hit. Is it possible that Major League pitching is just too overwhelming for him? I suppose, but it felt like Vargas's his actual skill set is one of those things that tends to translate more often than not.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, we see tons of guys who end up just being like the quad A type guys who are good enough in AAA, but can never really make that jump to MLB. So maybe that's something with him. I still think there's more talent there than he kind of showed last year. Yeah. I think the comparison with Gavin Lux we can make is Lux spent his first 2 or 3 years with the Dodgers never really finding his footing. He struggled. He was really bad in a few of those years. He dealt with some injuries and issues, and then he kind of finally started to cement himself as an everyday player for the team when he got that full-time chance in, I think, 2022 it was now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe Vargas kind of follows that similar path. I just think it's too early to give up on a player who they were so high on at that point, and maybe it backfires and it doesn't work out, but you're not going to get great trade value for him right now if you try and move him. Like, every organization's going to be saying, well, why do you want to move him now? You're high on him and then he struggled. Yeah. Like, why are we going to pay up for him? So it just makes sense for the Dodgers to keep him and try and find that talent. And I think they believe it's there. I think it's just not worth giving up on.
Yeah, I think when I think about those guys who are quad A players that you hinted at, it's not to say guys like Miguel Vargas never fail, but if you were to compare him to a Michael Busch type profile where it's power over hit tool, I would rather take my chances. I would bet on a guy like Miguel Vargas being able to adjust and adapt to major league hitting. And I'm not out on Michael Busch. Like I was very in on Michael Busch, to be clear. But if you just said, hey, here's two equal prospects, and one of them is more of a hit over power guy and the other is a power over hit guy, which one of these two do you think is more likely to be a quad A player versus a real MLBer? I personally would take my chances with the Miguel Vargas sort of profile. Again, I'm not saying Vargas over Busch, but I would take the Vargas profile over Busch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I tend to agree. I think you're getting a safer floor. We're going back to the floor talk we joked about a lot last show. But with Busch, you're getting more upside. I mean, the comparisons that kind of come to my head with them are Andres Jimenez for Miguel Vargas, with kind of a 280 type hitter who's not going to hit many homers, but he's going to be a solid player. And then you get like the Brandon Lowe type with Michael Busch, where it's going to be a lot of power, a lot of strikeouts, but he's going to go through some really rough patches as well. And I don't think that's not to say that Andres Jimenez and Miguel Vargas like don't go through their rough patches. Every player does. And I think Andres Jimenez struggled a lot last year too, but it's a safer floor where like, you're going to get around a 270 batting average. So you can kind of bet on that being a major league player. Whereas with the power guy, if they're not hitting homers, they're kind of worthless. So I kind of get what you're saying there and agree with it, but also like bring me the power. That's the kind of hitter I'm always going to look for.
Okay, well, speaking of that, I know that's going to get us into this debate. The third kind of big piece of news that has come out over the last few days, and I wouldn't say this is surprising, but Gavin Lux fully cleared for baseball activities. He arrived a week early for workouts, met with Dr. Neil Elatrosh last week, and was fully cleared. This is a guy, Blake, that you referenced that 2022 season, his first kind of extended shot at getting the job. He puts up a 114 weighted runs created plus and 3 wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs, which is a really solid season. I mean, if you're holding him to the standard of the rest of the Dodgers, like, wait, that's only half of Mookie Betts wins above replacement, you will perpetually be disappointed. But if Gavin Lux puts up a 3 wins above a 3 WAR season this year, Blake, it would be hard to be disappointed, I think, in that, because it feels like his expectations are far lower. I joked with you right before we came on. For context, Willy Adames, the guy that a lot of people, not all, some people want the Dodgers to trade for to replace Gavin Lux, was only worth 3.4 wins above replacement last year, and that was in 20 extra games. So higher quantity there from Adames, earned very differently. Adames, all power, play defense. Gavin Lux, low defense, kind of hit tool type of guy, not a 280 on base percentage guy. But Gavin Lux, let's just talk about Lux before we compare to Adames. Cleared for baseball activities, expected to be the starting shortstop. What sort of expectations do you have for him in 2024?
I mean, I'd say a step below where he was in 2022. It's probably a fair mark. He's probably not going to play as many games. We have to see how the defense holds up at shortstop and how his bat comes back. He started to seem like he was breaking out a bit in 2022, so hopefully there's a little more in the offensive upside, but I still wouldn't bet on it necessarily. He's not going to be a real power guy, so I feel like you're kind of capped out at where he was at that point, which, like you said, is still a solid player compared to other Dodgers. It's kind of a very average and boring player, but like this is a top 5 to 7 player on most other teams, and we're talking about him as like the worst player on the Dodgers starting 9. Like, I think that takes some comparison to think about there. He's a quality player. I think the Dodgers could do better. I'm mainly concerned about the defense, and that's kind of the reason why I wouldn't mind the Dodgers moving on and upgrading somewhere, but I think he's at minimum pretty solid and has a decent year to kind of establish himself as a regular in their lineup again.
On the defensive side, how below average are we talking? I mean, I would say Trey Turner, Corey Seager were never guys that were above average. Now, I know the Corey Seager people like might get angry. I never saw him as an above average guy. I thought he was fine. To me, Gavin Lux, I still think there's potential for him to be, quote, fine in my estimation defensively. And I would classify fine as kind of below average would be fine for me. It's not going to be a disaster out there. He's not going to be Miguel Rojas, obviously. But I think if he can be fine, that's good enough for me. Do you think he can be fine?
Well, if you trust the Dodgers' internal metrics, they graded him out as fine. I
That's
think that was a
beautiful.
report from Fabian Ardaya. We have an article up about it. If you want to go find it, just search Gavin Lux fine. I'm sure it'll come up.
I
But
think I might
when
find some other stuff there, Blake, if I just Google Gavin Lux fine. So I'll be careful
on
that I
our
look there.
website, on our website. But now I kind of lost my train of thought here.
You said they graded him out as fine
Yeah.
defensively.
Yeah, I think that was when he was filling in for Corey Seager, and I think it was 2021. That's how the metrics came out. So hopefully he can kind of get back to that point. I think the main issue with Lux is you kind of expect him to field the ball, and he has range. It's more about the throwing side of it, which is what he's always had issues with. He dealt with those a lot throughout the minor leagues, and then when he came up and played second base, he kind of figured it out more. But there are still like in there sometimes you could see those hesitations and just errors from throwing. So that's the main concern for me. Like, I don't think he's going to have trouble fielding the ball, or I'm sure his range will be fine depending on how his knee is, but it's just the throwing aspect that still concerns me.
Yeah, I'm looking at 2022. His fielding run value was 57th percentile. But I believe this was as a second baseman, right? He wasn't playing much shortstop in 2022. So, yeah, I mean, going back to just big picture, you would take the under on 3 wins above replacement if we kind of just project, hey, he's going to play roughly a full season, so somewhere in the like 125 to 145 game stretch. Like, are you thinking it's going to be more like low 2s, high 2s? Where are you at?
It really depends on how his knee is, like how many games he's able to play, of course. I'm kind of projecting them to play on the lower end of a full season, like maybe that 120, 130 mark, maybe even 110 or something, just as the Dodgers kind of work him back. They have Miguel Rojas to give him time off. And I think they're going to be really cautious with him to kind of make sure he's ready for the postseason. So maybe like a 2-2 to 2-7 type range there. And I think that's a fair expectation for him. He needs to actually like come back and prove that he's healthy and show that the bat is there. So I don't think we can project him to be better than he was before he got hurt. Yeah. So a little low seems like a fair projection.
I'm looking at Zip's projections now. They are not high on Gavin Lux, projecting a 700 OPS with a 250 batting average, a 91 OPS plus, and I believe a WAR below 2. So they're out on Gavin Lux. He's one of these guys that prospect pedigree. I always say if I see a guy fail who I didn't think was going to fail, are there reasons why? And we've gone over this hundreds of times. The COVID season, him getting COVID, all the disaster around that kind of makes sense. 2021 was what it was. And then 2022, he sort of becomes the player you were hoping him to be, and with potential. I mean, keep in mind in 2022, he was doing that at the age of 24. He's still only 26 years old. And so, yes, the knee injury is going to be an inhibitor, but I think the fact that this isn't a 30-year-old coming back from a major knee injury. He's 26 years old. He's had plenty of time to recover and cleared for baseball activity. So I'm optimistic about Gavin Lux. Again, optimistic does not mean I'm penciling him in as an all-star. Maybe when we get to some bold predictions, I could think of something with Lux, but I just think he's going to be a solid player. I don't think he's going to be a guy that, well, I was going to say he isn't going to get complained about. I think he's going to be maybe the worst everyday player on the Dodgers roster, so people are going to complain about him. But to your point, he's going to play at a level that would have him batting 6th or 2nd in most lineups in Major League Baseball. I think is kind of my bottom line where I land with Gavin Lux. And it sounds like while we might differ slightly, you're sort of in the same ballpark as that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair there. I mean, like you said, people are going to complain about him. I'd probably take Jason Hayward as the worst like everyday player for the team and Lux right behind him there. But I mean, we're talking about a super team where that's still a good player on most teams and probably a top 5 player, like I said, on most teams. So you can't have a superstar at every position. And I think Lux is going to be like, we'll go back to the word fine. Like he's going to be fine for them.
Yeah. Yeah. He'll be, I think, one of the more interesting guys because of just the mystery around coming off that knee injury and all that. I was just going to look up for some context. I mean, Max Muncy was a 2.9 wins above replacement guy last year. I know that's probably not going to get a ton of people super excited necessarily. Hayward was 2.2 wins above replacement in 124 games. JD Martinez, 2.2 wins above replacement. So I'm trying to put in context that 3 wins above replacement. That's a pretty solid number for a guy and that was the last time we saw him. obviously now coming off of a major knee injury. All right, next story here, Blake, and this is one that I think the chat is going to get a little lively for. And let's talk about these new jerseys and new hats that the Dodgers have unveiled. Let's start with the hats. They get a hat, spring training every year. This is the spring training hat for 2024. I was pointing out I am currently donning the 2023 version. I tweeted, Blake, I don't like the D logo here. I know they use it. I get it. I'm very grateful that last year when I wanted to buy a hat, they had the LA on the front. If you have the greatest logo in all of sports, I don't know why you would ever mess with it and change it. Alas, they have. Do you have strong opinions about the 2024 spring training hat?
I really have like no strong opinion at all. I couldn't really care less about the hat they wear in spring training. If it's cool, I'd go buy it. If it's not cool, like I just don't care. And this is kind of my just don't care. I don't think it's cool. I don't like it. It's just kind of boring and plain. It is what it is.
Okay, our guy Matt in the chat saying he likes it. Would you buy a bucket hat with this logo on it, Blake?
If it was just like a plain blue bucket hat, no. If they did something cool with it, like maybe put like cactus around it for the Cactus League or something, like, yeah, maybe I could be talked into that.
Yeah, we did get a cactus on last year's logo. This year, it's just a random home plate with a 24 on it.
It looks between the 24. There might be a cactus in blue.
Let's see. This
Possibly.
Next picture is the jersey. We might have a... Nope, you don't get a view of that. So the hats, to be clear, not stirring up controversy. Again, the logo, Sasha says it's a decent third logo. Yeah, but if you're the Dodgers, you don't need a second logo. You don't need a third logo. Just throw the freaking LA on the front of everything because it's the greatest logo in sports. I don't like hats that don't have the LA on it, I guess is the short version for me. I don't think I own any Dodger hats that don't have the LA on it. Just, it's classic. Why don't mess with the classic, Blake? It's a simple approach here.
If we're going to talk about don't mess with the classics, then I'm sure people are going to be mad with the next point. But yeah, I mean, I just don't really care about the hat. It is what it is for me there.
Let's talk jerseys. If you haven't heard of this story, congratulations. You're probably not on social media because everybody has feelings about the Dodgers' new jerseys, Major League Baseball's new jerseys. If you are new to this, there is a Nike swoosh on this. For some reason, Nike has decided that Fanatics is going to produce all of Major League Baseball jerseys, and the reports have not been awesome. Now, Jason Hayward, Dodger, spoke positively about them. As far as I can tell, Blake, he's the only person alive who has spoken positively about him. Do you know of anybody else who has given these the thumbs up?
Apparently Fanatics CEO and whoever else is designing their jerseys, but player-wise, fan-wise, media-wise, no, there's no one.
So Miles Mikolas said they don't fit right. The pants are no longer customized. The fabric is different. Another player was quoted as saying, quote, they look cheap. There's reports that like the curvature of the lettering and the names is going to be different. The text, the letters are much smaller. The jerseys are much smaller. You pointed out to me, Blake, that the white, it used to be last year that different teams had different color whites. They are now all the exact same. So the Dodgers had a unique color white last year in Major League Baseball. They no longer do. And then the first thing that kind of tipped people off just from looking at them, and if you look at the jersey that is behind Blake and the jersey that Yamamoto is wearing in this picture, you can kind of see the difference. It's where the jersey cuts across the Dodgers logo that is probably the most noticeable. On Yamamoto, you'll see the jersey cuts in the middle of the letter D versus the old jersey would have been right in between the O and the D. So kind of a little more seamless of a transition there. But this feels like, I mean, it again, rarely can you get the entire internet to agree on something, Blake. How bad these jerseys are, there seems to be, Jason Hayward aside, unanimous agreement.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how much Jason Hayward got paid or was forced to do that. Like, that was my main question when I saw who's making him do that, because I don't think anyone really likes these jerseys. I know Matt's throwing out, like, Kenley tweeted that they're good and Nolan Arenado said they're good, but, like, same thing with Hayward. That's my question.
Has anybody under the age of 38 tweeted out that they're good? Because you just named three guys that are, like, maybe the three oldest players in Major League Baseball.
Arenado might be under 38. I think he's like 35 or something now, 34. So there you go there. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this is just going to end up with me complaining about how terrible Fanatics is for 10 minutes or something. Like, I don't get why Nike and MLB would allow this, because Nike's just licensing their logo out to Fanatics now, so Fanatics can produce all the jerseys. And MLB is now the ones dealing with Fanatics. And next year, NHL switching to going to Fanatics jerseys with this route. And as I'm sure everyone knows in the chat, like, Fanatics has taken over all sports merchandising. If you go to lids.com, you're going to Fanatics website. If you go to MLB.com, you're going to Fanatics. If you go to NFL, you're going to Fanatics. It's taken over everything, and that's not really a joke. And there's a whole account like on Twitter called Fanatics Sucks, and it's just people complaining about their bad experiences with Fanatics, with how bad their quality is, how bad their support is, how terrible they are at sending the right things out. Even the jersey behind me, they sent the wrong size, and I have to go return it or do something with it. I haven't got around to it yet, but like, that's just Fanatics at this point. They're really bad as a company, and you're seeing it with the results of the jerseys now. Like, I think the concept of making every single jersey the same color white is just crazy. Like, aside from all the other things, the Dodgers had a unique jersey, and every MLB team had their own unique jerseys with the colors that they chose. And Fanatics said, no, you can't do that anymore. Like, they're not even customizing pant size for players. Like, that seems like such a basic thing for $1 billion company, where that's like the main thing fans see every game. Like, you see players in their jerseys. Why not make them look the best they can? And I don't get why they couldn't have done all the upgrades that they claim to have done with using better quality and better materials and better labor. It's just a very weird decision. And I don't know if any teams are going to kind of fight back. Like, the Dodgers jerseys don't look good anymore. And it's just a bold decision from MLB and Fanatics and Nike. And I say bold, but I really mean bad, and that's what it is. I could keep rambling forever, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, and for the Walker Buehler pant people at Alex Vesia tight pant crew, it sounds like the quote was they are not as customized. So I still think we're going to get tight pants. They just might not be quite as tight as some folks want. So keep that in mind. I see people joking you should buy knockoffs. It sounds like you get a knockoff for full price. So there's no, it's like, whatever. But I mean, look, most of us, I guess if you buy the jersey is when you'll find it. I'll be curious to see if this is a storyline throughout the year, as you said, if there is any pushback, or if this is kind of something we're talking about because there aren't any real news baseball stories to talk about yet.
I think it's come up more because the Dodgers were one of the first teams to show off their new uniforms this offseason with the press conferences and everything they were doing. Like, no one else really signed anyone besides the Giants had their press conference, and I think there was probably one other team, but now all other fans are kind of seeing what happened to the jerseys, and they're all questioning it. Like, I know Mariners Twitter kind of broke out over it, and Cardinals Twitter broke out over it, and the Dodgers Twitter kind of went through that maybe a month ago or something at this point now. So it's kind of funny seeing all the other fan bases join in and be like, wait, what happened? This is awful. So it's pretty unanimous that the jerseys are bad and MLB needs to do something, but we'll see if they actually do it.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Ohtani or Yamamoto's press conference where somebody was noticing the cut in the letters of Dodgers. It felt like that was the original, but as you said, as different teams have reported, it has continued to come up. So there you go. Some crazy stuff happening off the field. Let's get to some questions. If you've got some questions, go ahead, throw them in the chat. As we do, Blake, I kind of hinted at this announcement a little bit earlier, but Dodger Blue / Blake Williams, exciting news. So go ahead and tell the people what's happening here in a few weeks.
What one you want to talk about? I'm kidding. So yeah, about, I think it was last week now, we got our credentials approved to cover the games in Korea. And today I got my passport and we sent out the visa information to MLB. So we booked the flight, our hotel's booked, and I'm going to be out there covering in South Korea.
We've got a question from Dodger Blue that says, Blake, what's for dinner in South Korea?
We'll see. Haven't totally looked at menus yet. We have maybe only checked out one menu or two, but we'll get around to that at some point here soon.
Fair enough. I'll leave it. I'll leave it alone.
Jeff,
okay.
You can. I'll say it. You just want me to say that I looked at the menu at McDonald's there just because I was curious, and I found they have a chicken parmesan burger, basically with chicken mozzarella sticks on it and sauce. So I will probably be trying that.
I love that somebody guessed McDonald's. Paul Tricky guessed McDonald's and you are planning on eating this in Korea.
I mean, I have to try it, right? We have to compare it to IHOP at least for science.
For science purposes. There you go. Yeah, true story. That's amazing. I told you. I love that you're just you. It's amazing. Okay, Chris Beek, first question. Who pitches in the Korea game? There are 2 games, and we actually know one of the 2 answers here, don't we, Blake? Dave Roberts kind of revealed that Yamamoto will be pitching in one of these games. He also hinted at that there will be a piggyback situation. So if Yamamoto is one of the 2 games, we've kind of guessed that Glasnow probably the likely second pitcher or first pitcher, depending on who they decide to go first. If it was a third, would be Bobby Miller be next on that list? Like, how do you see that sort of second spot shaping up?
Probably Bobby Miller, but I mean, they have the 2 games before where we're going to probably see like prospects and stuff pitching before. If anyone's not familiar, they have the exhibition games with the Korean national team. And I think the Kiwoom Heroes of the KBO. So you're going to see a lot of pitchers in those games. It's going to kind of be Johnny Holstaff. And I guess if there was a third game, it would probably be Bobby Miller following. But I don't think they're going to care too much about like the rotation order as much as kind of setting up who's the best and ready to go at that point.
Okay. Hawaiian Kira wants to know, what's the expectation on City Connect jerseys? There's reports the Dodgers are getting new ones, that maybe the blue jumpsuit might be gone, but we don't really know much. Do we, Blake?
I think MLB just announced it today. I think Matt was covering that while I was at the passport agency. So I don't know too much about it yet, but expectation, I hope they stick with the blue jersey because I like when they mix it up kind of. I wouldn't mind like kind of a throwback with their light blue Brooklyn ones. Those Brooklyn ones they wore in, I think it was like 2008, were incredible. And I feel like they should bring those back. So I would love to see something with those.
But you don't want blue pants, right?
I mean, with those Brooklyn blue ones, like
no. I'm saying like if they stick with blue on the City Connect, I just get rid of the blue pants. That's all I care about.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think the white pants look better. It's just too much blue when you go with the blue pants.
Dave wants to know, do the DodgerHeads crew have nicknames for each other? If not, I'm pitching Baby Boy for Blake, given the baby face and dietary choices. We don't really have nicknames.
We go with Scotty for Scott.
True.
But that's about it. And that was because kind of an inside joke with the waiter in Arizona kept calling him Scotty without like really knowing him. So now we just kind of stuck with it.
It's amazing. Oh
yeah, we got D-Stark.
How do you D-Star? How do you feel about Baby Boy though? Are we thumbs up or thumbs down in that one, Blake?
I'm gonna go with a thumbs down, but we'll keep workshopping, I guess.
Okay.
We had Blakey Yoda. That's what Matt threw out.
Right, Blakey Yoda. That's right.
Yeah, I think you threw that one out originally.
True. Blakey Yoda is a great nickname. This is a big Star Wars guy over here. Sometimes brings his lightsaber to lightsaber day. Sometimes he doesn't. But when he does, Blakey Yoda over here. LTTE Beaches. Question, are we doing a live chat for opening day? That game's going to be on at 3 a.m. So to be determined. We're still working out some stuff. I will actually I guess Blake will be in Korea, so he won't be doing a live chat. I'll be up watching it. I just don't know exactly where, because that falls right around a trip that I make every single year that doesn't involve the Dodgers. But there will be tons of content around opening day. I'll say that much. And at the very least, we'll have Twitter to interact with each other because we will be awake and watching. Blake, it'll be, I guess I don't even know what time that game is over there. Do you know?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. I was telling Blake, I've been to Seoul 3 or 4 times, and it is just one of the most amazing places in the world. And it's going to be amazing. So much Korean barbecue in your future. Here we go. Men have skin too. Question, which is more likely, Ohtani hitting 55 home runs or Lux hitting 20? Let me ask you this, Blake. How high would the Ohtani number have to be before you're not picking Ohtani in this question? 65?
I'd say maybe 60. I might take the Lux one.
Okay.
But as a full-time DH, maybe 65. Yeah, I don't think Lux hits more than like 15 or so. So I'm taking the Ohtani one. But shout out to the profile picture there, the Lego Boba Fett. That's great.
There you go. There you go. What did he have? Yeah, he had 6 home runs in 2022 for context. So that was in 129 games and a season where he played pretty well. So yeah, it might be 70 for Ohtani before I take the 20 there. All right, let's get to some more questions here. Alex, what does Ohtani have to do to win MVP strictly as a DH? He has to have an Aaron Judge type season, I think is the answer here.
Yeah, I think he'd have to set some records. Maybe break that Acuna stolen base mark, because that kind of guarantees it, apparently, as we found out last year. But yeah, he's going to have to 70 type homer, 130, 40 RBIs, somewhere around there, like crazy numbers, because DHs just don't win MVP.
Joe Punk, how do you guys think Yamamoto will be affected by the 15-second rule? I've heard some people on social media asking about this because by all accounts, people that watched games of his, he was more of a slow moving guy. Do you see this? I mean, we saw for some major league pitchers, it had a little bit of an adjustment period. Of course, he'll have spring training to work through some of that. Do you envision this being any sort of an issue, Blake?
It's hard to say without like having really any data on it and seeing what he can do, because every guy's different. So I wouldn't really worry about anything until it actually shows it's affecting him. Maybe it'll tire him out a little quicker than he's normally used to, or maybe it'll affect something with him, but it's hard to say. I don't really have a great answer for that until we see how he does and adjusts.
He's a young guy. Like, there's going to be so many things. It's a totally new environment. And so I think he's just going to be used to new things at this point. I don't know. I tend to think this stuff might get a little overblown. Michael says, do the Dodgers trade for Devin Williams? Also, Blake is doing Panda Express in Korea. Blake, can you promise us you won't eat Panda Express in Korea?
I think it's pretty safe to say I won't, because I don't care for Panda all that much to begin with.
Okay.
So I think we can say yes there. Regarding Devin Williams, I don't think they trade for him. I think if the Dodgers add a reliever again, it's going to be Kenley or Chris Martin, but I don't really see those happening at this point. So no, I don't think they're going to make another big trade.
LHTD Mueller, is Walker Buehler a trade candidate? We know he's going to be a free agent after this season. I think we asked David Vassay, and he said that there had been contract conversations prior to his second Tommy John. The Dodgers and his people had discussed a possible extension that got tabled once he was injured. And now at this point, they're just going to kind of play out this season. Could you imagine a scenario where the Dodgers traded Buehler?
Not early in the season. I think it could be a possibility, like midway through the season, right before the trade deadline. If they have a lot of healthy starting pitchers, they like what they've seen from some of the young guys and feel like they have the staff to kind of make it work trading him. I wouldn't totally rule it out. They did that with Mitch White and Ross Stripling, and I know they're not on the same level as Walker Buehler, but he's a guy who's probably not in their long-term plans at this point. So it wouldn't totally shock me, but I still think they're kind of just all in on winning this year. And it just wouldn't really make sense to trade him. But like Andrew Friedman has done crazy things before where he trades a pitcher that no one was expecting them to trade, or does something like that kind of out of the unknown. So I wouldn't totally rule it out.
Yeah, I think the case you make is a pretty good one. Like if the Dodgers get to the trade deadline and Clayton Kershaw, they feel good about kind of where he's at, and maybe he's already come back and performing well, and they feel like they've got 5 or 6 other pitchers that they trust, maybe a comfortable lead in the division, and they're looking ahead and saying, hey, this guy isn't going to be in our 4-man playoff rotation, and prices are just through the roof as they were last trade deadline. I could see it happening. I wouldn't say it's likely, but I think it's an interesting question for sure. Lewis asking a question we've been asked a lot. Do you think the Dodgers will look at Kenley Jansen? Boston seems interested in moving. I believe it's tomorrow that pitchers and catchers report for the Boston Red Sox. And that was kind of thrown out as David Vassay as that would feel like the time when you would want to do it before he has to go and report. Of course, we're recording this. It's Tuesday night at 7:46. 10:46 East Coast time. It doesn't appear as if that is going to happen before then, but what do you think? If you had to guess yes or no to Kenley Jansen being a Dodger, what would you guess?
At this point, I'd say no. I still don't think it's totally ruled out with pitchers and catchers reporting. I mean, we saw the Dodgers trade for Craig Kimbrell after pitchers and catchers already reported for every team. So it's not something that they would be totally against. But it seems like at this point, the reports are the Red Sox don't want to eat money on Kenley Jansen's contract, which probably going to hesitate a lot of teams on going to trade for him, especially if you're giving up fairly decent prospects. So just doesn't seem likely at this point, and the Red Sox will probably try and move him at the trade deadline.
Pizza in the Box. Does Blake know who BTS is?
They're the Korean band, right? The boy band or whatever.
That's okay. Pop culture reference for Blake. So they're ahead of Ludacris in his pop culture knowledge rankings for those wondering. AC, if the club approaches Walker Buehler's starts or innings pitched too conservatively for his liking, do you think there's the potential for hard feelings to develop?
I think they're going to have a lot of conversations over this because Buehler obviously wants to set his market and kind of prove he's healthy. I wouldn't say hard feelings or anything. I think the Dodgers understand, like, they're probably not going to re-sign him. So if Buehler says he's healthy and he wants to run out there, like, let him go do that. Buehler probably kind of decided with them that it would be in his best case scenario to hold off a little on the season and not wear himself out early on, especially when he's going to want to win a ring with the team and he wants to show he's healthy. There's no point in risking so much in April or possibly even May. So I don't think they're going to like have any problems over it. I think the Dodgers are just going to talk to him a lot and figure out what works best for both sides.
Yeah, look, the way that free agency has unfolded and the amount of money that guys are making, I think if Walker Buehler just pitches well and is effective when he's out there, I don't think he's going to lose himself a lot of money if he misses a couple starts or if the Dodgers slow play him. If anything, that may help him. I mean, look at the money that James Paxton just got, and he was a disaster for like the second half of the season and a guy with all of the Walker Buehler health concerns. And so I don't think Buehler's going to make a big stink, as you said, especially if the Dodgers are winning. Let's see. I love this from BC that I should do a live play-by-play of Dodgers opening day. We'd need a lot of cold brew pumped into my veins to be 3 a.m. dialed in on whatever's going, especially if it's one of these, like there's, 13 different pitchers used in the game and whatever. So we'll see. Eric wants to know, do you think Gavin Lux or Jung-Hoo Lee will be a more valuable player next year? Lee, of course, will be a rookie for the San Francisco Giants, projected to play center field. Zips has Lee as a far more valuable player. 3 wins above replacement is the projection for Lee. 1.9, as I said, is kind of the Gavin Lux number. It's comboed with Miguel Rojas. So I don't know if you think Miguel Rojas is a plus or minus valuable player next year, but let's call Lux 2 and Lee 3.
I'll go with Lee. I think is probably the safer bet. I mean, he's not as proven as Lux is based on Lux's 1 year, but I think Lee's going to have the he's going to benefit from playing center field with the Giants there.
Yeah.
He's a good defender. That's going to help his WAR numbers. They're pretty similar in terms of offensive profiles. It's like contact more so than power, kind of rely on their speed, get on base. So I think Lee is a little bit better offensively, plus his defense in center field should help him out.
This one's a low blow, but I'm asking it because it feels like, secretly at some place in your mind, you might agree with this. Michael wants to know, what month does Jason Hayward get cut?
I don't think it happens. I think it would have to be really bad for the Dodgers to move on. They kind of value the clubhouse presence, and the defense is going to be good out there regardless of how his offense does. So I just don't really see it.
I like this one. Who gets cut first, Barnes or Paxton?
I mean, I don't think either of them get cut either, but I guess Paxton, just on the basis of they have more pitchers than they do catchers, and I think Barnes is pretty safely locked in.
Yeah, I was going to say to the Hayward question, if Austin Barnes ain't getting cut, Jason Hayward ain't getting cut. Go ahead.
Do we remember how long it took him to cut Trace Thompson when he was like one of the worst players in baseball? Like, he didn't even provide nearly half the value Jason Hayward will provide regardless of the offensive side. So I just didn't see it.
Yeah, they gave Syndergaard a pretty decent leash. Of course, he ends up getting traded, but they gave him a leash and he wasn't exactly a positive clubhouse guy by all accounts, as far as just his comments in the media. Like, he wasn't afraid to voice his displeasure with things that were happening around him. We've got a super chat from Jose Ayala. You guys think the Ohtani coverage is affecting the clubhouse? Hayward's comments made me wonder. I say Ohtani makes the entire team better overall. We referenced this at the beginning of the show, Blake, but we talked about how Jason Hayward was sort of designated jokingly by Dave Roberts as the guy that people can ask questions about Ohtani to. Hayward didn't seem overly amused by the fact that he might be that guy. So do you think this ends up being something that affects the clubhouse? Could it be a clubhouse uniter, like us against the world? I mean, how do you see it playing out?
I don't think it'll matter too much either way. I think Dave kind of joked about that comment, and then it was taken seriously and went to Hayward, and then he was like, it's not my job to talk about Ohtani, it's Ohtani's job to talk about Ohtani, which I think is a fair point and good response from him about that if he doesn't want to deal with it all the time. So I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. I think it'll kind of die down. It's just like early spring training talk, not a lot going on. Like, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Jose, thank you very much for the super chat. We greatly appreciate that. I like this one. Blake has been surprisingly optimistic over the past 6 months. It hasn't been 6 months since the Dodgers lost. I'd say maybe the last 8 weeks, 3 months. But I mean, this is a new thing for you, Blake. I like this.
I mean, I said they had to sign Yamamoto and Ohtani for this offseason to be a win, and they went out and did that. And then they also did a bunch of other things. I didn't expect Glasnow. I didn't expect Teoscar. So it's been a really good offseason for them. I think I fairly criticized them last year enough that this year has kind of made it a lot better and canceled it out.
Okay. Cheesecake wants you to know that he hears the Cheesecake Factory in Korea is legit. Do you have thoughts on the Cheesecake Factory?
I do like cheesecake a lot. It's probably my favorite dessert, so I'll maybe have to go check that out there.
No, please don't. You can't. You have to go to local places, Blake. If you go to any chain restaurants, American chain restaurants, you shouldn't even be going to McDonald's. You're already committed yourself to wasting a meal in South Korea at McDonald's. You're not allowed to do that at any other American places.
I'm going to have like 16 meals there or something, if not more. Like, it's going to be okay. I can use 1 or 2 of them. I'm just saying, the chat is saying the Cheesecake Factory in Korea is legit. Why would I not go try that then?
Esteban, what playoff teams from last year do you guys think will not be back this year? So last year we had on the National League side, Arizona, Milwaukee, Miami, Philadelphia, LA, and Atlanta. I look at those 6. Milwaukee seems like an obvious one. The Marlins are always hard to project, but I mean, Milwaukee seems like an easy one to not pencil back in as they've traded Corbin Burns, right?
Yeah, that's probably the one I'd go with. I think I'm going with them.
On the AL side, Toronto, Minnesota, Texas, Tampa, Baltimore, and Houston. Some interesting ones. I mean, again, Minnesota kind of surprised some people. They get the 3 seed there. Texas is an interesting one. I know, like, they just won, so it's weird to say this, but like their pitching is a total disaster. And it's not like their division is really, really bad either. So if I was going to kind of pick a sleeper to sort of potentially have a down year, it worries me that half of their rotation is out until after the All-Star break. And their like best pitcher in the postseason last year, Montgomery, remains a free agent. They've got financial issues with the regional sport network stuff. So Minnesota, probably the safer bet, but Texas scares me a bit.
I'm going to say all the same teams make the playoffs in the AL.
Okay. I like it.
That's what I'm going with. No changes there.
Okay. Hawaiian Kira, home run predictions for the first 4 in the lineup. Mookie, Ohtani, Freeman, and I'm guessing Will Smith would be number 4 here. Let me see if I can. Oh, here we go. I've got last year's. Mookie had 39 last year. Freddie had 29 last year. Will Smith had 19. And then what did Ohtani finish with? Do you remember?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
50
I'm
something.
looking at a Dodgers stat page, so that's not helpful. 44. So 44 for Ohtani. Let's do this. You think he goes over or under?
I'll say over is the full-time DH because he did miss some time last year once he got the injury, and I think he didn't play for the final week or 2 of the season. So,
okay. Mookie 39. You going over or under 39?
I'm gonna go under.
Okay. That was obviously a great year for Mookie Betts. I believe a career high. Is that right?
Yeah.
So he had 35 the year before. But yeah, I mean, I'd probably put him closer to that 35 mark. Freddie Freeman, 29 last year. You going over or under Freddie Freeman, 29?
I'm going to say under.
Okay.
I feel like 27-ish range there.
Yeah, he had 21 the year before, 31 the year before that, 38 in 2019, pre-COVID year. So 29 feels about right. I'll go over. Freddie's going to hit a number that starts with a 3. Will Smith, 19 last year. That was in 126 games, so a pretty healthy campaign for Will Smith. Had 24 and 25 the years before that. So you betting on a bounce back for Will Smith, and he gets into the 20s?
Yeah, I'm going to say over. He had the broken ribs and the concussion, so I think over is probably a safe bet there.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, let's see what else we've got in here. Bob Nightingale, thank you so much for joining us as always. Lots of questions, which is great. AC, what kind of numbers would Teoscar have to put up to drive any discussion for an extension? It is interesting because the Dodgers do not have outfield prospects sort of pushing. I mean, Andy Pages is there coming off major surgery, hasn't really reached the top levels of the minor leagues yet. If he pans out, he's probably a year away, 2025. But we mentioned right field. Jason Hayward is on a 1-year deal. So, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Teoscar Hernandez could be a guy the Dodgers would want to keep around for a while.
Yeah, I think the tough part with him is if he has good enough numbers where the Dodgers are going to want to keep him, like another team's going to want to pay him more than the Dodgers would probably be willing to. And if he's going to come back on a deal that the Dodgers would be really comfortable with, it'd probably be a somewhat underwhelming season from him. So I don't really see it happening, but maybe if he just crushes lefties and he's bad versus right-handers, then the Dodgers would be like, hey, you're great for our platoon and we want to keep you around. But I just don't really see it happening.
Okay. William, any non-chain restaurant recommendations for spring training? I'll go first. Eric's Family Barbecue. I mean, I'll be honest. I was crushing Blake for chain restaurants in Korea. You and I went to Raising Cane's at least twice, maybe 3. Look, okay, I'll let you go first because actually you know what I'm going to say here. It's a chain, but I'm definitely recommending it, and Blake hates it. But you have any recommendations first, Blake, spring training?
I don't. Last season was the first time I've ever been out to Arizona, so I don't know too many of the restaurants yet. I know Matt took me to Culver's and some other place, Felipe's or something. He's probably
Where did I take you? I took you to the best meal you've ever had in your life.
Yeah. Matt said Freddy's. You took me to Waffle House for the first time.
That's where you got to eat, William, is the freaking Waffle House. It's amazing. If you have a little child or 2 little children, maybe don't go to the Waffle House late at night, but it'll be open and it's amazing. Very pro Waffle House over here. Dodger Blue wants to know, is Blake's favorite new restaurant Lazy Dog?
So me and Matt went there after Fan Fest while we were waiting for the Mookie charity event to start. It was the first time I've been there. I think Matt was a little surprised about that. And then I told Scott about it and he was surprised. I liked it a lot. It was really good. There was a lot of things that I saw on the menu that I wanted to try. So we're planning on going back there pretty soon here. And I'll give a better update on that in the future.
Okay. Jason wants you to know that the boneless wing is an extremely undesirable piece of chicken. The companies have wisely marketed as a boneless wing as the connective tissue makes it terrible to cook with. As a resident boneless better than bone-in wings guy, do you have a response, Blake?
I'm getting more chicken with my chicken wings, so that's all I really care about here.
Okay, let's do one last question, baseball question. If someone wants to throw one more food one in here, we can end on that. Dave, why do you feel Walker Buehler won't be back? I want to clarify, Dave, the word guys in there is unfair. There is one person who believes that Walker Buehler is not going to be good this year. His name is Blake. Myself, Matthew Moreno, are both firmly in Team Butane. So, Blake, the floor is yours because I believe he will be back.
I think Scott is a little more on my side too. So it's not just me on the floor here.
I haven't heard Scott. Scott hasn't put it on the record yet. So, but if you want to put him on the record that way, I'm fine.
My concern is before he had the injury, his stuff was already declining. His fastball velo was going down. His stuff was dropping. The spin wasn't there as much. After this sticky substance ban, the stuff took a pretty big hit and he was struggling. I think he was an ERA in the 4s before he actually got hurt. And coming back from 2 Tommy John surgeries is very tough. Not many pitchers do it. They say he points to Nathan Eovaldi as the guy he's giving himself like hope for, because Eovaldi had 2 Tommy Johns and came back and dominated in the postseason for the Rangers. But it's a very short list of players who have come back from 2 Tommy John surgeries and been successful, as opposed to a much longer list of guys who haven't been able to do it. So it's just a lot of concerns there for me. And I don't mean like he's not going to come back and just be terrible. Like, I think he might be more of a 4 ERA guy than the ace we are looking for. Like, Jeff, you're giving me that look, but a 4 ERA
What
guy
was the
is
word
going to
you
get
used, Blake? What was the word you
I
used?
said cooked, which
That's
an
not a
ace
4
going
ERA. Bobby
an
Miller
ace,
was a 3.8 ERA last year.
an ace going from like a 2 ERA to low 3 ERA guy to like a mid 4 ERA guy is probably cooked. Like, that's going to get you paid on the market still, but he's not just going to be in that ace status anymore, in my opinion. So that's how I feel about it. It's hard to say until we actually see him pitch, but that's just my concern.
Yeah, I believe Bueller will be fine. I think pre-injury he was still very good. I think he tried pitching through an injury and struggled mightily, and then has been out. So I know all the reports about stuff. I just believe in Walker Bueller, the person, the competitor, all that kind of stuff. And again, I think he was still good / effective. You know, we joked about Stuff Plus. I went and looked. He was above average on Stuff Plus, even in that season, even with his Stuff Plus plummeting the back half of the last season he pitched in. So Blake and I disagree greatly on Walker Bueller. And again, 4 ERA, we might be close to agreeing, but you use the word cooked. To cook to me is Noah Syndergaard is cooked, not 4.00 ERA. Bobby Miller was a 3.8 guy last year. You can't use the word cooked to describe a guy who is close to Bobby Miller ERA. Noah
Syndergaard is washed. Walker Bueller's cooked. There's a difference.
Those two words seem very similar to me. So maybe with semantics here. Pizza in the box. Blake, as Hawaiian Kira mentioned in the chat, Korean street food. Korea is wonderful on American classics. Grilled cheese sandwiches and fried chicken is a must. You will be happy. You like fried chicken, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Chicken and beer is a thing in Korea. There's a place that I went to that has what's called sprinkled chicken, and it is like the greatest thing that I've ever eaten. I have pictures. You can order it to be delivered. So it's awesome. Korean food is just incredible all the way around. There's a super touristy part of Seoul that is called, the name is escaping me right now. It's like, everyone makes fun of me for going there because it is like the most touristy international place. But they have, one of the things I love is that they have like these food carts, street carts set up everywhere. Now, you do have to be careful, Blake, because they have these, I tried one and it was like a strawberry dipped in some stuff and it looks like chocolate. Not chocolate, red bean paste, actually, which is the thing that they use as a sweet. Some people love it. Other people don't love it. I was in the don't love it camp, but the food there is amazing. I saw from Hawaiian Kira. She said, do you have a Korean dish that you prefer or you want to try? Do you have you researched? I mean, I know you're going to get some Korean barbecue, hopefully lots of times. Is there anything else that you've researched besides McDonald's as far as that's on the to-do list food wise?
No, I haven't looked into it much at all yet, so I'll have to
dedicate
some time.
You're not a kimchi guy.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what kimchi is? It's like a fermented cabbage that's spicy. I'm going to guess you're not going to be into it.
That doesn't sound like me now.
You should try it. It's going to be awesome. I was trying to think. Whatever. The food there is amazing. Kimchi fried rice is amazing, but if you don't like kimchi, that might be a problem. Kimbap is amazing. There's all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's like, it makes me, I'm excited for you because I have faith that you're going to come home and having eaten amazing stuff. But the Korean fried chicken is a thing, Blake. So that'll feel like a safe spot for you to land.
I will say I did look up Burger King, but not about like the food specifically that I wanted. It was to kind of settle like a talk I was having with someone. Like, they have the black buns and they did that here for a bit, but I think they use charcoal for it. But there they use squid ink. So I wanted to actually look at the ingredients and see if it was squid ink there. So yeah, I'm not trying that, but I did look it up to confirm that.
Okay. Korean hot pot is another great thing. And bulgogi. Bulgogi's amazing. You'd probably like that. Beef bulgogi. It's like really thinly sliced.
I think I've had that
before. It's like a Korean barbecue kind of in that world. So you'll like it. Okay, here's one last question. We'll end on this. In 2025, if you could keep Bueller or Kershaw, who would you keep, Blake?
Who would I like?
Obviously, this is hard because Bueller will be a free agent. Kershaw has a team option or a player option, excuse me. But who would you bet on in 2025?
Bet on? Probably Bueller, I guess.
Okay.
Uh,
Who would
I
you
don't know.
rather have on the Dodgers?
Kershaw because of the sentimental value, I guess. But like, this is I feel like this is a very loaded question here. Like, there's so many ways of looking at it. Like, if you don't keep Kershaw, is he going to the Rangers? And then you have to see him retire a Ranger. If you keep Kershaw, like, is he going to be done? And you're letting potentially Bueller getting back to form and being an ace go. If Bueller's bad and they're both bad, then like you don't really want either on the team. Like, there's just so many different outcomes for how that question could play out. But
Yeah.
I guess Kershaw seems like the safer answer just because he's a Dodger legend and
Yeah.
Bueller isn't. So Kershaw is the answer, I guess.
Yeah. Kershaw is lifetime contract. I've said it before. And it is funny because I think Bueller in some ways, Dodger legend, you're right. He's not a Dodger legend. I think much like a guy like Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager, they've established themselves in a non-entire career time in Dodger as a Dodger
Seager's a legend.
What's that?
Seager's a legend. Get it straight here.
You're going to use the same word to describe Corey Seager as you would Clayton Kershaw?
Corey Seager won them a World Series. That's all I need to know.
Okay. Corey Seager doesn't get the same word that Clayton Kershaw gets. I'm saying he's a guy that will long be remembered and long should be like remembered and honored by Dodger fans, even if his time with the Dodgers was not 10, 12, 15 years. So Kershaw's the answer to me. Always Clayton Kershaw. Although I like Walker Buehler and don't think he's cooked. So 2025 Walker Buehler. Let's go. So, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. We will be here. Friday night, we will be back at 9 o'clock. I believe it'll be me and Matt Moreno doing that one. And then Sunday night, Blake and Matt will be on that show. But mark your calendars, Tuesday nights, Friday nights. We'd love for you to join us. If you can't make it live, check us out, Apple, Spotify, and Google. Search for the DodgerHeads podcast. And if you haven't already, even if you just have those apps, find it. Even if you don't listen to the podcast, subscribe. That would do a great favor to us. Comment, rate, review, all that sort of thing. It helps us out as we're trying to build up the podcast platform. That is Blake Williams. I am Jeff Spiegel. Folks, enjoy the rest of your night. And as always, go Dodgers.